Hello everyone. So in this hour we are going to talk about properties of conductors. If I ask students which particular topic you do not understand in electrostatics a lot, they say they do not understand property of conductors, and all the points which I am going to teach here are given in NCERT. So they are important, they can come in need and you should know them. And moreover, there are just 5-6 points that you need to remember, and all of this is simple. Towards the end of this hour, we will understand about the distribution of charges on the surfaces in case of multiple shells as well as in case of parallel plates that will help you strengthen your topic of capacitor better. I always say that physics is one big continuum. If you won't understand this, you will find problem in understanding capacitors. But if you will understand this, believe me that understanding capacitor will be a cakewalk. So without wasting time, let's start understanding the property of conductors. So the first question that comes in mind, what the hell is a conductor? So a conductor is something that has got large number of free electrons. When I use the word free electrons, it means that the electrons are free to move within the object. It can't go outside the object. Now a conductor has got large number of free electrons. Let's say we have placed a conductor in an external electric field, and this conductor has got large number of free electrons. Tell me, in which direction force will be experienced by the electrons? So sir, if you deploy an electric field towards right, electrons are negative charge carriers, they will experience a force towards left. And because of the force on electrons towards left, they will start accumulating on the left surface. Since initially this conductor was neutral and now on the left surface you have got negative charge, so from the principle of conservation of charge, on the right surface you will get a positive charge. My simple question from students is, do each and every electron within the conductor move to the left surface? How to answer this? Think of it. Why are the electrons moving to the left? So electrons are moving to the left because of the applied electric field. If the electric field is towards right, the electron will experience a force towards left. But as soon as electrons start moving towards the left, an electric field is created within the flesh of conductor due to the induced charge. You can see on the left surface we have got negative induced charge, on the right surface we have got positive induced charge. So that's why due to the induced charges, an electric field exists inside the conductor from positive charge towards the negative charge. So we say that an electric field is induced inside the conductor which opposes the external electric field. Okay. Now the electrons will keep on moving in the direction opposite to the external electric field till the time induced electric field will be weaker than the external electric field. But as more and more electron move, the strength of induced electric field increases. And at some point of time, the induced electric field becomes equals to the external electric field. When the induced electric field in the flesh of conductor becomes equals to the external applied electric field, the net electric field within the flesh of conductor becomes zero. And once the net electric field within the flesh of conductor becomes zero, the electrons stop to drift. The electrons stop to move. And once the electrons stop to move, you can say that now we have achieved an electrostatic condition. The topic we are learning is the topic of electrostatics, where the charges are at rest. So once the electrons have stopped moving, I can say with 100% guarantee that there is no net force on an electron present in the flesh of conductor. Otherwise, it will keep on moving. If there is no net force on an electron present in the flesh of conductor, it means that the induced electric field has become equal to the applied electric field, and that's why the net electric field in the flesh of conductor is zero. So this is the first point that you need to know, and the first point goes like, the charge are induced on the surface of conductor when you place a conductor in an external electric field till the time the field in the bulk of the conductor becomes zero. So the charges keep on inducing on the surface of conductor till the time the electric field in the bulk of the conductor do not become zero. Under steady state, the electric field in the flesh of conductor is zero. So once the charges have induced and now the electrons are not moving to one side, I can say that the net electric field in the flesh of conductor becomes zero. So remember that under steady state, the electric field in the flesh of conductor is zero. Sir, what if the electric field in the flesh of conductor is non-zero? Then the electrons will move. And that's our next chapter, current electricity. When the electrons are moving within the bulk of conductor, they move because of the applied electric field. And when electrons move in the bulk of conductor, it leads to a flow of charge that's called current. And that we will learn in the next chapter. Right now, we are learning electrostatics when the charges are at rest. And for the induced charges to stay where they are, the net electric field in the flesh of conductor has to be zero. This is the first important concept you should know. So under steady state, under static condition, the electric field in the flesh of conductor is zero. Moving on to the second point. Under steady state, all the charges given to a conductor is found on its surface. So if you take a conductor and you give the conductor some charge, all the charge is found on the surface of conductor. We do not find any net charge in the bulk of conductor. So we say the net charge in the flesh of conductor under steady state is zero. Sir, why? Have you got the first point that under steady state, the net electric field in the flesh of conductor has to be zero? Have you got that point? If you haven't, think of the logic again. I am saying under steady state. It means that electrons are no more drifting to one side. If electrons present in the flesh of conductor are no more drifting to one side, it means that the net electric field has to be zero. So the induced electric field in the direction opposite to the external electric field cancels it out. Now the second point I am saying, all the charge given to a conductor reside on its surface. In the flesh of conductor, in the bulk of conductor, you won't find any net charge. There will be electrons, there will be protons, but there will be no net charge. Sir, can you justify this? And I can justify this using Gauss law. Let's say you have got this conductor, okay? And this conductor is in steady state, yes. If I ask you, there is a point in the flesh of conductor, what is the electric field here? So sir, from the first statement, I know that the electric field at this point has to be zero. Now visualize a Gaussian surface here containing this point. A Gaussian surface is a three-dimensional closed surface. Can I say that if I draw or imagine a Gaussian surface within the flesh of this conductor, then at each point on the Gaussian surface, the electric field is zero? Yes, sir. And we know that the net flux coming out, which is nothing but integral of E dot ds equals to Q in by epsilon naught. Since at each and every single point on this Gaussian surface, the electric field is zero, we will say that the net flux coming out has to be zero. And since the net flux coming out has to be zero, the net charge inside has to be zero. So I can draw the Gaussian surface here, I can draw the Gaussian surface here, I can draw the Gaussian surface here, I can draw Gaussian surface anywhere. And within all these Gaussian surfaces, we know that the net charge has to be zero because at each and every point on these Gaussian surfaces, the electric field is zero. So since the net charge inside all of these Gaussian surfaces is zero, we say that in the flesh of conductor, you can't have net charge. So where do you find the charge given to a conductor on its surface? So the second property that we need to notice here is that all the charge given to a conductor resides on its surface. Okay. The third point. If you have got multiple conductors in the shape of shell, the first one having charge q1 radius r1, second one charge q2 radius r2, third one charge q3 radius r3, and they are under static condition. It means that charge is not flowing from any one of the shell to the other one. Sir, if the charge is not flowing from any one of the shell to the other one, I can say for sure that these shells are at same potential. Because we know that if there will be a potential difference, current will flow from the shell at higher potential to the shell at lower potential. So if all these shells are under static condition, then their surface potential has to be equal. Since their surface potential has to be equal, I can say that kq1 by r1, the potential on the surface of first one, has to be equals to kq2 by r2, the potential on the surface of second one has to be equal to kq3 by r3. Now bachcho, if I assume that the surface charge density of the first shell is sigma 1, then I can say that the charge on the first shell equals to its surface charge density, the charge per unit area, multiplied by its surface area, and the surface area of shell will be 4 pi r1 square. So in place of q1, I can even write sigma 1 into 4 pi r1 square. Similarly, if I assume the surface charge density of the second shell to be sigma 2, I can say that the charge on the surface of second shell is sigma 2 into 4 pi r2 square. And similarly, I can do it for third shell as well. So we get k into sigma 1 into 4 pi r1 square upon r1 equals to k into sigma 2 into 4 pi r2 square upon r2 equals to k into sigma 3 into 4 pi r3 square upon r3. Now बच्चों cancel out k 4 pi 4 pi 4 pi 1 r1 with 1 r1 1 r2 with 1 r2 1 r3 with 1 r3. Hence we can say sigma 1 r1 equals to sigma 2 r2 equals to sigma 3 r3, and this has to be constant if you have got even more number of such spheres. Now one can visualize one continuous conductor to be made up of infinite number of shells connected one after the other. I know that this is not the proper explanation, but it's a way to understand that for the surface of a conductor, we can say that all the points on the surface of conductor are at same potential. Sir, how can you say that all the points on the surface of conductor are at same potential? Think of one point on the surface of conductor, let's say x, and another point y. If I go from x to y via the flesh of the conductor, I know that at each point when I move in the flesh of conductor, the electric field is zero. Since at each point the electric field is zero, there will be no potential change as I move from x to y, because we have learned when we move in direction of field, potential decreases. When we move in direction opposite to field, the potential increases, and when we move perpendicular to field, the potential remains the same. So moving from x to y along any path from the flesh of conductor, I won't find electric field at any point, and since I won't find electric field at any point, I know that there will be no potential change, and hence the potential at x equals to potential at y. So similarly, if you have a conductor, you can go from any one point on the surface of conductor to any other point on the surface of conductor via the flesh of conductor. And since there will be no electric field, there will be no potential change. And as there will be no potential change, you can say that all the points on the surface of conductor are at same potential. Since all the points on the surface of a conductor are at same potential, the surface of a conductor is an equipotential surface. Now here we have got multiple shells which are at same potential, and for them I said that sigma 1 r1 equals to sigma 2 r2 equals to sigma 3 r3 equals to constant. Similarly, if we have got only one conductor, I can say the local surface charge density or the local surface charge per unit area multiplied by the local radius of the surface of conductor is constant for the entire surface of conductor. So on the surface of conductor, you say the local surface charge density multiplied by the local radius is constant. The local surface charge density multiplied by the local radius is constant. To understand this better, let's take an example. Question is, we have got this conductor in the shape of an egg. Okay, so this is an egg-shaped conductor, and we have given this conductor some charge q. Question is, if some charge is given to the conductor, mark the correct option. The surface charge density at A is more than the surface charge density at B. Option 2, the surface charge density at A is equals to the surface charge density at B. Option 3, the surface charge density at A is less than the surface charge density at B. And option 4, nothing can be seen. We know up till now from the properties that we have already learned. First thing, at any point in the flesh of conductor under electrostatic condition, the electric field has to be zero. The second point, all the charge given to a conductor resides on its surface. Number 3, since in the flesh of conductor at every point the electric field is zero, all the points on the surface of conductor are at same potential. Since all the points on the surface of conductor are at same potential, that's why for the surface of conductor sigma into r is constant, and the surface of conductor acts like an equipotential surface. So wherever the local radius will be smaller, there the sigma will be high, because sigma into r has to be constant. So think of the local radius around A and the local radius around B. You can see that the local radius around B is less than the local radius around A. Since the radius around B is less than the radius around A, the surface charge density around B is more than the surface charge density around A. So we can say that since the local radius at A is more than the local radius at B, as RA is greater than RB, beta, since sigma into R has to be constant, as RA is more than RB, we can say that sigma A has to be less than sigma B. So sigma A has to be less than sigma B. So the charge per unit area around point A will be less than the charge per unit area around the point B. Okay, let's see next point. Electric field just outside the surface at a place where the local surface charge density is sigma is given by sigma by epsilon naught. So not sigma by 2 epsilon naught, no, sigma by epsilon naught. Let's say you have got this conductor. Okay, we have just learned for the surface of conductor all points are at same potential. It acts like an equipotential surface. For each point on the surface we can say that sigma into r is constant. Yes sir. So since a random shaped conductor has got different radius at different points, its sigma at different point will be different. Yes sir. Now think of a place where the local surface charge density is sigma. Okay. Now just the way we have derived the electric field due to an infinitely large plate using the Gauss law, I am going to derive this as well. Now think of a Gaussian pillbox. Through the curved surface of this Gaussian pillbox, you will say the flux linked is 0. So flux will be linked only with the flat surface. But the problem is that this other flat surface which is inside the conductor, at all these points the electric field has to be 0 because in the flesh of conductor the field is 0. So you will say at this point just outside the surface, we know that since the surface of a conductor is equipotential surface, the direction of electric field will be normal to the surface. The direction of electric field is normal to the equipotential surface. So if you assume that this Gaussian pillbox, just a cylinder, has a cross-sectional area A, the net flux coming out will be EA, and this EA has to be equals to the charge enclosed by this cylinder. Now this cylinder encloses a charge on the surface of conductor where the local surface charge density is sigma and an area A, so the charge enclosed will be sigma A upon epsilon naught. Hence you will say the electric field comes out to be equals to sigma by epsilon naught. So if we have a conductor to which some charge is given and at a place on the surface of conductor the local surface charge density is sigma, then you say at a point just outside this surface of conductor, inside electric field will be 0. Just outside the surface of conductor at a place where the local surface charge density is sigma, the electric field has to be normal to the surface. So why not normal? Because the surface of a conductor is equipotential surface, right? So the electric field has to be normal to the equipotential surface, and this electric field will be equals to sigma by epsilon naught. So we get the electric field at a point just outside the surface of a conductor to be normal to the surface and having a magnitude sigma by epsilon naught. Remember this. So moving on to the next point, which is again important and students do not remember it. Energy stored per unit volume in the form of electric field is. Sir, energy is stored in the form of electric field? Yes. Inside a capacitor, the energy is stored in the form of electric field. Inside an inductor, energy is stored in the form of magnetic field. Sir, are we going to learn this? Yes, for sure. But for now, remember that if you have got electric field in space, then energy is stored in the form of electric field. And we say that the energy stored per unit volume, which is also called energy density. Energy density means energy stored per unit volume. The energy stored per unit volume in the form of electric field is given by half epsilon naught E square. Sir, you know what? All the energy formulas look like half something square, half k x square. So that's why they are easy to remember. Yes. So remember that the energy stored per unit volume in the form of electric field for an electric field E present in vacuum is given by half epsilon naught E square. This quantity, energy stored per unit volume, can also be called to be energy density. So energy density is nothing but half epsilon naught E square. You need to keep this thing in mind as well. I will use it at a later stage while teaching you the energy stored inside a capacitor. So moving on to an example. If some charge Q is given to a conductor and it reaches a steady state. Okay, so again the egg-shaped conductor. Compare EA and EB. Around which point the electric field strength will be higher, or will both of them be same? So we have just learned that if we have a conductor and we give it some charge, If at a place the local surface charge density, the local charge per unit area is sigma, then at a point just outside it, the electric field will be normal to the surface and the electric field strength will be equal to the local surface charge density sigma upon epsilon naught. And we have even learned that since the whole surface of the conductor acts like an equipotential surface, that's why for the whole surface of the conductor sigma into r equals to constant. It means that at a place, look at the surface charge density, look at the local radius, multiply them, and that will be constant for the entire surface of the conductor. So we can say that for the surface of conductor sigma r equals to constant. Since the local radius at A is more than the local radius at B, so we can say charge per unit area at A will be less than the charge per unit area at B. Why, sir? Because beta sigma into R has to be constant now. So where the local radius is more, there the sigma has to be less. Now since we know that sigma at B will be more than sigma at A, the surface charge density at B will be more than the surface charge density at A, we can say that the electric field strength at B has to be more than electric field strength at A, because if at any place we have got local surface charge density sigma, the electric field is given by sigma by epsilon naught. So, and E equals to sigma by epsilon naught. So where you get more charge per unit area, there you get stronger electric field. So since the charge per unit area around B is more, the electric field around B is more. So we can say that electric field at B is more than the electric field at A. Moving on. Field due to infinitely large conducting plate. We have learned what is the electric field due to an infinitely large non-conducting plate having charge per unit area sigma. What is the difference between a conducting plate and a non-conducting plate? Beta, think of a metal sheet and you are looking from the side. If you have given this metal sheet a charge q, where will the charge reside? So we have learned that all the charge given to a conductor resides on its surface. So this metal sheet, just like a soap film, has got two surfaces. On which surface you will find the charge? On the left surface, on the right surface, or on both of them? So you will say, sir, the charge should go on both the surfaces. So there will be some charge on the left surface and some charge on the right surface. And my heart tells me that they have to be equally distributed over the left surface and the right surface. You're very right. Now, we know that due to a single surface having charge per unit area sigma, the electric field is given by sigma by 2 epsilon naught. Sigma by 2 epsilon naught. But just like a soap film has got two surfaces, a conducting plate has got charge on two surfaces. So if you think of a case where you have got thin two sheets, the first one having charge per unit area sigma 1 and the second one having charge per unit area sigma 2. Okay, I have drawn two lines, but visualize we are looking from the side. These are two infinitely large plane sheets. You will say that at point A, the field due to the first sheet will be towards left, the field due to the second sheet will be towards left. Yes, sir. At point B, since a positively charged sheet will produce field away from itself, due to the left sheet, the field will be towards right, and due to the right sheet, the field will be towards left. Yes, sir. At point C, since positively charged infinitely large plane sheets will produce field away from themselves, due to the left sheet, the field will be towards right, and due to the right sheet, the field will be towards right. So you will say the electric field at A due to the first sheet will be sigma 1 by 2 epsilon naught, and due to the second sheet also sigma 2 by 2 epsilon naught. So you get sigma 1 by 2 epsilon naught plus sigma 2 by 2 epsilon naught towards left. Similarly, at point B, due to the left sheet, field is towards right. Due to the right sheet, the field is towards left. So at point B, you will get field to be sigma 1 by 2 epsilon naught minus sigma 2 by 2 epsilon naught towards right. And at point C, because of both the sheets, the field will be towards right, and due to single sheet, the field will be equals to sigma by 2 epsilon naught. So you will get at point C, sigma 1 by 2 epsilon naught plus sigma 2 by 2 epsilon naught towards right. So what are you trying to say here? I'm trying to teach you how to write the field due to infinitely large conducting plate. But sir, you have taken here just two plates. Again, just like a film has got two surfaces, a conducting plate has got two surfaces. and on both the surfaces you get the charge on the front surface and on the back surface. So if you look from the side, an infinitely large metal sheet, and you give this metal sheet a charge q. On the left surface you get a charge q by 2, on the right surface you get a charge q by 2. If this plate has got a cross-sectional area A, somebody asks you what is surface charge density, that is the charge present on the surface per unit area. So you will say on the left area A, a charge q by 2 is distributed, so the surface charge density will be q by 2 upon A. And on the right surface also, the surface charge density will be equal to q by 2 upon A. So now think that these two surfaces which I have drawn are two surfaces of an infinitely large plate. Now, if there is no external electric field and no other plate present, whatever charge is given to the plate gets equally distributed on the two surfaces because of symmetry. So on the left surface, whatever you get the charge per unit area, you get the same for the right surface, which will be nothing but the total charge given by 2 divided by the cross-sectional area. So if sigma 1 equals to sigma 2, let's say equals to sigma. If sigma 1 equals to sigma 2, let's say equals to sigma. Then at point A, the net electric field will be sigma by 2 epsilon naught plus sigma by 2 epsilon naught. That becomes equals to sigma by epsilon naught towards left. At point B, if both of them have got same charge per unit area sigma, at point B the net electric field will be 0. And at point C you will get, because of both of them, sigma by 2 epsilon naught plus sigma by 2 epsilon naught, you get sigma by epsilon naught towards right. So sir, what are you trying to say here? A conducting plate has got two surfaces and whatever charge is given to it is found on both of its surfaces. So if both the surfaces have got equal surface charge density sigma and sigma, then at the point A, the net electric field will be sigma by 2 epsilon naught plus sigma by 2 epsilon naught. That becomes equals to sigma by epsilon naught. At point B, between the plates, the net electric field will be 0, and at a point C on the right, you will again get sigma by epsilon naught. So that's what I'm saying. In the question, you need to read carefully that it's a single sheet, non-conducting sheet, or it's a metal plate. If they say that a metal plate has got surface charge density sigma, then you need to understand if there is no other electric field or other charge distribution present, then on both the plates you will have identical surface charge density sigma and both of them will produce the field. And this is what leads to many students doing the question wrong. If you find any question in which you are confused that why they have taken here sigma by epsilon naught and why here they have taken sigma by 2 epsilon naught, do post your doubt on the Telegram channel. So moving on. Distribution of charge in case of multiple parallel plates. So let's say here you have got two plates. Okay, the left plate, which is a conducting plate, has got a charge of 2 coulomb, and the right plate, which is again a conducting plate, has a charge of 4 coulomb. If there would have been only a single plate of charge 2 coulomb, then I would have said the charge of 2 coulomb would have equally distributed on the two surfaces of this conducting plate. So the charge on the left surface will be 1 coulomb and the charge on the right surface will be 1 coulomb. Similarly, if there is only the 4 coulomb plate present, then the charge would have evenly distributed on the two surfaces of this 4 coulomb plate. So the charge on the left surface of this 4 coulomb plate will be 2 coulomb and the charge on the right surface of this 4 coulomb plate will be 2 coulomb. But now here we have got influence of other plate as well. So now how to get what will be the charge distribution on these 4 surfaces? You can find them easily using some simple application, and in the end I will tell you a trick using which you will be able to write the charge distribution within 10 seconds. But first, let's go the proper way. The first thing I said about the conductors is that under static condition, the electric field in the flesh of conductor is 0. So let's assume that the charge on the left surface of this first plate is x. If the charge on the left surface is x, the right surface will have charge 2 minus x. Sir, how do you know? Beta, from principle of conservation of charge. If out of the 2 coulomb charge, the left surface have a charge x, then on the right surface, the charge has to be the remaining charge 2 minus x. Okay, sir. Similarly, for this 4 coulomb plate, assume that on its left surface, we get a charge y. So on its right surface, we will get a charge 4 minus y. We know that the electric field in the flash of conductor under electrostatic condition has to be 0. So think of the point in the flash of conductor here at 2 coulomb and 4 coulomb. At this point, between the two surfaces within the metal, we know that the net electric field has to be 0. So assuming all 4 charges as positive, write the electric field at this point within the flash of conductor and make the electric field to be 0. So by using the concept for 0 field at a point inside the first plate, the field due to the charge x here should balance out the field due to the charge 2 minus x, the charge y and the charge 4 minus y. Better do understand, I have assumed that this x, 2 minus x, y and 4 minus y are all positive. So all of them produce field away from themselves. Since this point within the flash of the first plate is on the right of the plate with the charge x, it will produce a field towards right, 2 minus x towards left, this y towards left and this 4 minus y towards left. I have assumed all of them to be positive. And we know that if we have a single surface of charge per unit area sigma, it produces a field equals to sigma by 2 epsilon naught. So because of this charge x, the field produced will be equals to x by a sigma upon 2 epsilon naught. Due to 2 minus x, the field produced will be 2 minus x upon a upon 2 epsilon naught. Due to y, y upon a upon 2 epsilon naught. And because of 4 minus y upon a upon 2 epsilon naught. So the field produced by x has to be balanced by the field produced by the other three. Now you can cancel out a, 2 epsilon naught, 2 epsilon naught, 2 epsilon naught, 2 epsilon naught. So what you get is x equals to 2 minus x plus y plus 4 minus y. Now once you have got this, you can see that this y get cancelled. So bringing this minus x to the left hand side, you get 2x equals to 2 plus 4, which is 6. Once you know that 2x equals to 6, you can say that x has to be equals to 3. So the charge on the left surface of the first plate is 3. The net charge is 2 coulomb. The charge on the left surface is 3 coulomb. The net charge is 2 coulomb. The charge on the left surface is 3 coulomb. So the charge on the right surface has to be minus 1 coulomb from the principle of conservation of charge. So that 3 plus minus 1 becomes equals to 2. Right? Now similarly, we can find out the value of y by applying the same concept for the point inside the flash of the right plate. We know that at this point, the net electric field has to be 0. So for 0 field inside the second plate, the field produced by x will be towards right, the field produced by 2 minus x will be towards right, the field produced by y will be towards right, and the only field which is produced towards left is by 4 minus y. So you will say that if the field of 4 minus y balances out the field of other three, so we can say x by a upon 2 epsilon naught, the field due to x, plus 2 minus x upon a upon 2 epsilon naught, the field due to 2 minus x, plus y by a upon 2 epsilon naught, the field due to y, is balanced by the field due to 4 minus y, which is 4 minus y upon a upon 2 epsilon naught. Now cancel out a 2 epsilon naught, 2 epsilon naught, 2 epsilon naught, 2 epsilon naught. So what you get here is x plus 2 minus x plus y equals to 4 minus y. On the left hand side, the x and minus x gets cancelled. Bring this minus y to the left hand side. So on the left hand side you get 2y, and on the right hand side you get 4 minus 2, that is 2. 2y equals to 2, so y comes out to be 1. So the charge on this plate is 1. If out of the 4 coulomb, the charge on the left plate of this metal sheet containing charge of 4 coulomb is 1, then the charge on the right plate has to be 3 coulomb. So we will say the charge is 3, minus 1, 1 and 3. Charge is 3, minus 1, 1 and 3. Okay. Now I am going to teach you a trick so that you can go directly from here to here without writing the equation and reach the answer within 10 seconds, and we will practice few questions so that you learn to do this. So for parallel plates, remember the following points. First point, find the total charge and divide it equally on the outermost plate. Find the total charge and divide it equally on the outermost plate. This is the first point. Just listen. Second point, the two opposite faces charges are equal and opposite. On two opposite faces, charges are equal and opposite. How to apply it, we'll teach. The third point is, at a place between the plates, field is due to the charge on the inner plates. You can neglect this third point as of now. I will focus on this because this is the concept which is used in capacitor, the third point. Just focus on the first and second. the overall charge is equally distributed over the outermost plate, and on two opposite faces charges are equal and opposite. So let's understand this. Let's say we have got three plates, okay? And these three metal plates will have six surfaces: surface 1, surface 2, surface 3, surface 4, surface 5, surface 6. Now, how to distribute the charges on these six surfaces? So you will say, sir, first of all, find the total charge, okay? The total charge is 3 plus 4 minus 5, which is 7 minus 5, which is 2 coulomb. Divide this charge of 2 coulomb equally on the outermost plate. So 1 coulomb on the leftmost and 1 coulomb on the rightmost. Okay. Then pairs are formed. For example, if out of 3 coulomb, the left plate gets a charge of 1 coulomb, then the right surface will have a charge of 2 coulomb. From the principle of conservation of charge, the 3 coulomb charge got divided into these two surfaces. If here you get a charge of 2, then on two opposite faces charges are equal and opposite. So here you will get charge of minus 2. The net charge on the second metal plate has to be 4 coulomb. On the left surface you have got charge of minus 2. That means that the charge on the right surface has to be plus 6. So that plus 6 minus 2 becomes 4. And again, since pairs are formed here, if you have got plus 6 here, you will get minus 6. So that minus 6 plus 1 is the net charge, which is minus 5. So this is how the charge will be distributed over the six surfaces. So the charges will be 1, 2, minus 2, 6, minus 6, 1. Sir, I haven't understood. You will understand. Just remember the first step. Find the total charge and divide it equally on the outermost plate. Second, on two opposite faces, charges are equal and opposite. On the third point, I will come a little later. Just focus on the first two right now. So, let's say rather than giving you 2 plate or 3 plate, they are angry on you and they gave you 4 plates. Now, how to distribute the charge? Really quick, it's easy. So you will say the net charge will be 6 plus 4 minus 5 minus 1, 6 plus 4 10, minus 5 5, minus 1 4. So the net charge is 4. Distribute the net charge of 4 equally on the outermost two surfaces. So here you will have 2 coulomb, here you will have 2 coulomb. Distributed equally. If out of 6, here you get 2, here you get 4. If here you get 4, on the opposite plate you should have opposite charge of sign, same magnitude. So here you will get minus 4. The net charge on this second plate has to be 4. On the left surface you get minus 4. This means that on the right surface you have got plus 8. If here you have got plus 8, here you should have minus 8. If here you have got minus 8, here you should have plus 3. If here you should have plus 3, here you should have minus 3. Okay. So this is how you do the charge distribution. 2, 4, minus 4, 8, minus 8, plus 3, minus 3 and 2. Let's practice one more. If they have given you these 3 plates with the charges 3 coulomb, 6 coulomb, minus 5 coulomb. Again, first of all, find out the net charge. So the net charge will be 9 minus 5, that will be 4 coulomb. Distribute this 4 coulomb equally on the outermost surfaces. So 2 coulomb here, 2 coulomb there. If this whole metal plate has charge of 3 coulomb and on the left surface you have got 2 coulomb, then on the right surface you will have 1 coulomb. If here you have got 1 coulomb, here you will have minus 1 coulomb. The net charge has to be 6. Net charge has to be 6. And on the left surface we have got minus 1. Net charge has to be 6. So on the right surface we will get plus 7. If here you get plus 7, here you will have minus 7, such that minus 7 plus 2 gives you minus 5. Check in the end. So this is how you can distribute charge really quick. We have used the property that under the steady state, the electric field in the flesh of conductor is 0. Now let's see one more example, but this time in terms of variable. If we have got 2 plates with charge Q1 and Q2, okay. Now, how will the charge be distributed? So, for the sake of understanding, assume Q1 to be greater than Q2. So, you will say, sir, first of all, find out the net charge, Q1 plus Q2. This is the case of capacitor, important. Okay. Now, distribute the net charge equally over the outermost surface. So, here you will get Q1 plus Q2 by 2. Here you will get Q1 plus Q2 by 2. Now, on this surface, how much charge will be available? Sir, the net charge has to be Q1 on this whole plate. On the left surface, you get Q1 plus Q2 by 2. So on the right surface, you will get Q1 minus Q1 plus Q2 by 2. That is 2Q1 minus Q1 minus Q2 by 2. That becomes Q1 minus Q2 by 2. So here you get a charge Q1 minus Q2 by 2. And on the opposite plate, you need to have opposite charge. So here you will have beta minus of Q1 minus Q2 by 2 or Q2 minus Q1 by 2. So you get Q1 plus Q2 by 2 on the outermost. If you do Q1 minus Q1 plus Q2 by 2, you get Q1 minus Q2 by 2, and on the opposite face you will have same magnitude of charge but of opposite sign. So this is important case. for the case of capacitor. Now, electric field between the two plates. I just said that the electric field between the two plates depends on the charge on the inner surfaces. Sir, how? Let's take this example. Let's say you have got these two metal plates infinitely large. Okay. To the first plate, you give a charge of 6 coulomb. To the second plate, you give a charge of 2 coulomb. First of all, quickly tell me how will you distribute the charge? So, sir, the net charge is 8 coulomb. So, here 4 coulomb, here 4 coulomb. So, here you will get out of 6, 4 went to the left surface, to the right surface, 2 coulomb. And on the opposite face, you need to have equivalent opposite. Now, tell me, at a point between the plates, the net electric field will be due to which charges? So, you will say, sir, this 4 coulomb produces a field towards right. This 4 coulomb produces a field towards left. So the field produced by these two 4 coulombs will cancel out each other. This 2 coulomb positive will produce a field away from it, and this minus 2 coulomb will produce a field towards it. So they will produce the field in same direction. So the field at a point between two plates is due to the charge present on the inner surfaces. Okay. So let's say we have got the charge distribution on the 4 surfaces to be Q1, Q1, Q2 and minus Q2. This Q1 and Q1 will cancel out each other's electric field. They are same type of charge. While due to Q2 and minus Q2, there will be electric field in same direction. If the plate area is A, you will say due to this single surface, we know that if you have a single surface of charge per unit area sigma, the electric field produces sigma by 2 epsilon naught. So due to this single surface having charge Q2, the charge per unit area will be Q2 by A. So this single surface Q2 will produce an electric field equals to Q2 by A upon 2 epsilon naught towards right, and the same magnitude of field will be produced by this negative plate in the same direction. The negative plate will produce a field towards itself. So you will say that the electric field will be equals to due to this positive Q2 by A upon 2 epsilon naught plus in the same direction due to this negative Q2 by A upon 2 epsilon naught. So you get Q2 by 2 epsilon naught plus Q2 by 2 epsilon naught, that becomes Q2 by epsilon naught A. So I said that the field at a point between two plates depends upon the charge on the inner surfaces enclosing that space. So let's understand this with an example. Determine the electric field at point A and B. So here you have got 3 plates with charge 7 coulomb, 2 coulomb minus 3 coulomb. Your mission is to determine the electric field strength at point A and B. Before you determine the electric field strength at point A and B, first of all, bachcho, let's redistribute the charge. The overall charge here is 7 plus 2 minus 3, 7 plus 2 minus 3 gives you 6. So here distribute it equally, 3 on the leftmost, 3 on the rightmost. So out of 7, if here you got 3, here you will have 4. If here you have 4 on the opposite surface, you will have minus 4. The net charge has to be 2. On the left surface, you get minus 4. So on the right surface, you will have a plus 6. Plus 6 minus 4 gives you plus 2. Plus 6 minus 4 gives you plus 2. And on the opposite surface, you will have minus 6. Always check in the end. Minus 6 plus 3 gives you minus 3. Okay. Now once you know what is the charge distribution, now I want to clear the concept once more before I teach forward. See beta, at point A, this 3 produces a field towards right and this 3 produces a field towards left. So these 3 cancel out each other's field. At the point A, this 6, which is a positive charge, produces field away from itself towards left. This minus 6, which is negatively charged, produces a field of same strength towards itself. So the field due to these 2 6s also cancel out each other. So at point A, the net field exists only because of this 4 and minus 4. The 4 produces the field towards right and minus 4 also produces the field towards right, and I can say the field has to be nothing but 4 upon epsilon naught A. So at point A, the field will be nothing 4 upon epsilon naught A towards right. Similarly, at the point B, these 2 3 cancel out each other's field. These 2 4 and minus 4 cancel out each other field. So at point B, due to 6, the field is towards right. Due to minus 6, the field is towards right. So at point B, the field will be equals to 6 upon epsilon naught A. And you need to remember this. Okay. This will be used in the case of parallel plate capacitor at a later stage. So you need to remember this particular result. Not a tough one, right? Moving on. What if rather than having multiple parallel plates, we get the case of multiple shell? It's easy. Just listen to the argument carefully, you will get it easily. So if let's say you have a shell with a charge of 4 coulomb, a metal shell with a charge of 4 coulomb, and inside the shell you have placed a point charge of 2 coulomb. So question is, what will be the charge on the inner surface of the shell? What will be the charge on the outer surface of the shell? Just the way I said that inside a bubble of soap placed in air, the excess pressure is 4T by R because it has got two surfaces, right? So think 3D. If you have a metal shell, it will have an inner surface, it will have an outer surface, right? So what will be the charge on the inner surface and what will be the charge on the outer surface? Sir, I have learned the first thing in today's hour is that in the flesh of conductor under steady state, the electric field is zero. Yes. Let's say out of the 4 coulomb, the charge on the inner surface comes out to be x and the charge on the outer surface comes out to be 4 minus x. The net charge is 4 coulomb. So out of 4 coulomb, let's say on the inner surface of this shell, the charge comes out to be x and on the outer surface, the charge comes out to be 4 minus x. Now I can visualize a Gaussian surface denoted by this red color between the inner surface and outer surface of this shell. So each and every point on this Gaussian surface lies in the flesh of the conductor. Since each and every point on this Gaussian surface lies in the flesh of conductor, at each and every point on this Gaussian surface, the electric field strength is zero. If electric field strength is zero, you will say that the net flux coming out is zero. If the net flux coming out is zero, you can say that the total charge inside is zero. So within this Gaussian surface, which is imagined between the inner surface and outer surface, that is within the flesh of conductor, at each and every point the electric field strength is zero, the flux linked with this Gaussian surface is zero, so the total charge inside should be zero, but the total charge inside this red Gaussian surface is 2 plus x. So you can say the net charge inside the Gaussian surface has to be 0, so 2 plus x has to be 0, so x has to be equals to minus 2. Once you know that the charge on the inner surface of shell is minus 2, then you can find the charge on the outer surface. How? Sir, 4 minus minus 2, that is 6. So out of this 4 coulomb, minus 2 coulomb of charge is found on the inner surface and 6 coulomb of charge is found on the outer surface. One more way to understand this. All the electric field lines coming out of this positive charge, which has got charge of 2 coulomb, terminate on the surface of the inner shell. Since all the electric field lines coming out of this charge of 2 coulomb terminate on the surface of inner shell, because they can't reach the flesh of conductor, because within the flesh of conductor the electric field has to be zero, and we know that for the termination of same amount of electric field, the charge on the inner surface has to be same. That's why also one could have said that the charge on the inner surface has to be equal and opposite to the total charge inside it, which is 2 coulomb. Okay, let's see the next example. Now you have got two shells, no charge inside but two shells. A shell of charge 4 coulomb, another shell of charge 6 coulomb. For the sake of understanding, I have drawn these two shells thick. Now question is, these two shells will have 4 surfaces: inner surface of inner, outer surface of inner, inner surface of outer, outer surface of outer. On these 4 surfaces, what will be the charge? So you will say, I don't know, let's say the charge is x, 4 minus x, y and 6 minus y. Okay. Now, once you have done this, how to find x and y? So you will say, sir, just look at this inner shell. Yes. Within the flesh of this inner shell, the field has to be 0. Yes. So if you think a Gaussian surface between the inner surface and outer surface of this inner shell, then at each point of that Gaussian surface, the electric field has to be 0. So the net charge inside that Gaussian surface drawn between the inner and outer surface has to be 0. If the net charge inside has to be 0, it means that x has to be 0. If x is 0, so the charge on this inner surface is 0, so the charge on the outer surface of inner one, which is 4 minus x, will be 4. So 0 and 4. Now similarly, you can think of a Gaussian surface between the inner surface and outer surface of the outer shell, and the charge enclosed by this Gaussian surface also have to be 0. Yes, so the charge enclosed by this Gaussian surface also have to be 0. So you will say that x plus 4 minus x plus y should be equals to 0. Cancel out x and x, you get y equals to minus 4. Once you know that y is minus 4, the charge on the outer surface of outer shell will be 6 minus minus 4, that becomes 10. So the charge will be 0, 4, minus 4, 10. This is how the charge gets distributed. So from Gauss law, you will say that x equals to 0. Why? You have thought of a Gaussian surface between the inner surface and outer surface of the inner shell. And from Gauss law, you can even think of another Gaussian surface between the inner surface and outer surface of the outer shell. And you will write x plus 4 minus x plus y equals to 0, or y comes out to be minus 4, and then you can think of the distribution of charge. You get 0, 4, minus 4, 10. So here also we will learn trick like we learned for the parallel plates. Yes, the same thing will be taught here. Better notice that pairs are formed, equal and opposite charges, and the charge on the outer surface of any shell, the charge on the outer surface of any shell is equal to the total charge inside. What's up? See, the charge on the outer surface of inner shell came out to be how much? Sir, 4 coulomb. What is the total charge within the boundary of the inner shell? Sir, 4 coulomb. So 4 coulomb. What is the charge on the outer surface of outer shell? So the charge on the outer surface of outer shell is 10 coulomb. What is the charge enclosed within the outer surface of outer shell? So the total charge 4 coulomb plus 6 coulomb. That's why you got 10 coulomb. So remember that pairs are formed, and on the outer surface of any shell you get the total charge inside plus on that surface. So on two opposite surfaces of shell, equal and opposite charges are formed. That's what I say, pairs are formed. And second thing, the charge on the outer surface of any shell is same as all the charges inside or on its surface. You can neglect the second point. I will explain this when you will have more than 2 or 3 shell. That's where you will be able to appreciate the beauty of the second point. So let's talk on it. Let's say they have now given me 3 surfaces. Okay. So on the outer surface of this innermost shell, you should have the total charge equals to the charge within this shell or on this shell. So here you will get a charge of 4. Since here you get a charge of 4 on the outer surface of inner shell, on the inner surface you will have 0. Now pairs have to be formed. So if here you get 4, here you will get minus 4. Out of 6, if here you get minus 4, the net charge on this intermediate shell has to be 6. On the inner surface you get minus 4, so on the outer surface you will have 10. If on the outer surface of this intermediate shell you have got charge of 10, then on the inner surface of the outermost you will have minus 10. And the net charge on the outermost has to be minus 2. If the charge on the inner surface of the outermost is minus 10 and the net charge is minus 2, then the charge on the outermost surface of the outermost shell has to be plus 8. So this is what the charge distribution looks like. 0, 4, minus 4, 10, minus 10, 8. Now you can pick up any of the shells and know that the net charge enclosed within the outer surface equals to the total charge inside plus on that shell. If we look at the net charge on the outermost surface of the outermost shell, tell me what is the charge? Sir, 8. What is the net charge on this system? 4 plus 6 minus 2, 8. If you look at the charge on the outer surface of the intermediate shell, what is the net charge enclosed within the intermediate shell? So you will say, sir, 4 plus 6, 10. That's why you got 10. Okay. So that's how these two statements can be used. So if tomorrow they give you this system, at center you have got 4 coulomb, then you have got 6 coulomb, then minus 4, then 3, then how to do the charge distribution. So you know that on this surface, on the outer surface of the innermost shell, you will get net charge of 4 plus 6, that will be 10. So here you get minus 10. Net charge has to be minus 4. Here you get minus 10. So here you have plus 6. Here you have plus 6. Here you will have minus 6. Net charge has to be 3. Here you get minus 6. So you get plus 9. Minus 6 plus 9 gives you 3. Okay. And since here you have got net charge of 6, but on the outer surface you have 10. So on inner surface you will have -4. So this is how the charge distribution can be done. -4, 10, -10, 6, -6, 3. If you are not able to calculate as fast as I do, beta, go through the examples after 1 day or 2 day once more. The examples will be again new to you, and you will be able to do this yourself in 10 seconds. What I find wrong with many students is this: they do not focus on theory. They're just like more numerical, more numerical, more numerical. If you will be well equipped with theory and basic maths, physics is super easy. So the points which I said after parallel plates, you should know them. The points which I said after multiple shell, you should know them. And then the things will be easy. So I will end up this day with this last example. Find the final charge on all the 4 surfaces once the key is closed. So here you have got 2 shells. Yes. Now inner shell has charge Q1, outer shell has a charge Q2. You are going to connect the outer shell to the earth, and after connecting the outer shell to the earth, your mission is to find the charge on all the 4 surfaces. So what to do? So first of all, ground the outer shell. And we know that after connecting the outer shell to earth, the potential of the surface of the outer shell has to be 0. Potential has to be 0. Charge may or may not be 0. So let's assume after connecting to earth, let's say the charge on the outer shell is a small q. Okay. We know that if the charge on the surface of the outer shell is a small q, the charge should be such that because of it, the potential at a point on the surface of outer shell becomes 0. So write the potential at a point on the surface of the outer shell due to the charge on the inner shell and outer shell. Due to the charge on the inner shell q1, the potential at a point on the surface of outer shell will be k q1 by b. Due to the charge on the outer shell, the potential at a point on the surface of outer shell will be kq by b. And you have connected the outer shell to earth. So its net potential has to be equals to 0. So you will say kq1 by b plus kq by b has to be equals to 0. From here you get q, the charge on the outer shell will be equals to minus q1. Now all you have to think is you have got 2 shells here. The inner shell has a charge q1, the outer shell has a charge minus q1. What will be the charge on the 4 surfaces? Easy to find. 0, q1 minus q1, 0. Distribute the charges, right? So you get the charge distribution to be 0, q1 minus q1 and 0. So that's all in this hour about the property of conductors. Whatever has been taught here will be used again when we do the chapter of capacitor. The next hour coming up is gravitation specific, where we will talk about Kepler's law, satellite, energy of the satellite, and so many things. So see you guys in next hour. Bye bye. So that's all for now. See you guys in the next hour.